the way I arranged the pieces had a lot to do with how one piece would function next to, right, so close to the other with no walls between them because of the overlapping sound. Also, so there's some silent pieces that are more noisy, more silent, with language, not with language, and so I alternated these works. Also, what happened in one section of this enormous room was that there are three works that are quite close together. One called Revolted by the Thought of Known Places, and Lines in the Sand and Volcano Saga. And so there are certain themes that relate to each other, which I thought about later, actually, after putting those pieces near each other. And then I built a model, and I really conceived of it in a visual way. How would it look? And how would one piece look next to each other? And how do you arrange those elements that overlap and that you see in the distance? I won't know how the show is until I see it all finished, because you cannot imagine from a model or even from the computer model what exactly it's going to be, a show like this. Well, the question of distance and how I'm interested in keeping the public at a distance, in both physically and psychologically. In this show, it's hard to imagine that because the public walks through the works there. Some of my early works are turned into installations, and so the public didn't see them this way when I first did them. The film Dalla began as a piece that happened a quarter of a mile away from the audience. Then when I made a film of it and translated it into the medium of film, the camera had to be closer to the players or you wouldn't be able to see what they were doing. So throughout my career, my work, I have continuously refashioned my works and translated them into different situations because I'm interested in the public experiencing them. I don't want to hide or remain distant. Most of these works have been shown in separate rooms previously to this, in survey shows. Now they're all in one room. And so as one walks around, one sees the works in a three-dimensional situation, maybe more like, really much more like sculpture. They're not contained by rooms. I'm interested in deconstructing my performances. There's a constant exchange and interaction between my performative work, my installations, my single-channel video works. There's a constant kind of exchange of images, information, ideas, sound. Well, speaking of various influences and the mention of Chirico, a surrealist, I think surrealism was a big influence on me to begin with. You know, when I was studying sculpture and art history, there were many artists that I was entranced by, and painting was not an influence, but a source. For instance, I looked at paintings and many Renaissance paintings. You know, I'm very interested in the space of paintings. What a flat surface? How do you deal with a flat surface with the illusion of space? So I really when I began to do performances, I looked at spaces and then the frame of a film or the frame of a space, and thought about how painters dealt with that space. So that was a big influence. Chirico, I like his constructions of space, the way of course there you have basic geometric forms in space, the cone, all those painters at that time, the circle, sticks, you know, extending into space, and arcades in cities, Italian plazas, the space of films, and also Tintoretto. There's a painting in Venice in which you see this space. I'm sure that influenced people in this. You know, it's continued over the years to influence people. I can say specifically that in I Want to Live in the Country, I was thinking of Chirico, because there you see his objects, the globe, you see the object. There's a horse that's kind of surrealist. It's a 19th century copy of a Leonardo horse and so on. I began with a mirror as a prop, and I came from the visual arts. I wasn't a dancer or a performer, and so I was interested in using objects, forms in relation to my body to begin to have a kind of narration, and also a prop or an object inspires a certain kind of movement. For instance, the mirror check, which is not in this show, where I look at myself with a small mirror, created a movement because of that idea. The movement comes out of that. And then often I start in the early work, I really like these long sticks from the very beginning because they extend the body. And I often put on music and take a prop and improvise. I mean, we all use improvisation, but all of the work comes from trying things out and practicing and repeating something until it's interesting. And these props inspire movements, and also they represent certain things. The props represent different things. A prop is an object that can be found, it can be made. I make my own props. When I switched from sculpture to performance, I came into that world with the idea that there wasn't a huge difference between these different mediums. So I primarily saw the similarities in the different mediums. For instance, thinking of the space of painting and how painting relates to the sequencing in film, So I brought these things together. This piece, which relates to the work of Abby Warburg, this piece represents a journey I took in the 60s to the Southwest, where I saw the Hopi dance. And then I didn't want to do anything with that because I respect the Hopi and I would never use their imagery. But when I found Abby Warburg's text, I knew I could go back to that visit because it was so important for me to see this ritual. It was unbelievably, amazingly beautiful. And so I re-entered this world. I went back to that world. Nature is a major element in my work. Like all of us, the time I spend in what we call nature is some of my most productive and inspiring times. So I bring it into my work because my work is set in these landscapes. And the landscapes are suggested by the places that I travel to, that I go to.